the audit results that came out.
Oh,
That recurring, and they just keeps coming, they say we need more diversity of people in different, things too. And I was like, so, because I always look to see how long these been going on.
Yeah.
And I hadn't read it yet, but I looked at the things.
The
I did,
calendar
what's this one
and
about?
everything.
And then I started reading,
The
like,
second half
holy
of my
God,
taxes
when
are
you're a tiny
due in
county,
weeks.
it's not even tiny counties. They go, I
Yeah.
don't know where they stop.
Just to remind myself.
Maybe they don't tell that to another county. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but it is interesting because you would think with, I was gonna,
Just a
check
general-
with you on that to
So
see,
we have
it's
that
like,
one public
how many
comment to
counties
read that
are
was
carrying this
sent by
as
Joe.
an issue?
And
Oh.
then,
And if there's a whole bunch
Oh,
of
she's
us,
here.
then
Yeah,
why isn't
she's
this
here
looked
too.
at from the state level to say that that's really not required?
They're just they're just telling you to be on alert.
I'm sure reading that wasn't on my radar.
It's just to stay aware.
Yeah, it wasn't on mine either. I didn't know if,
Because that's where,
And always good advice, clearly.
that's what I was assuming. You
always
want me
see
to
it.
ask?
I mean, the fraud that comes up in the,
I'll go ask her real quick.
the newspapers and the
Yep.
news. It's always some.
She's here, she may just wanna-
One person in charge of
That's
it.
exactly right. Yep,
They can't resist.
yep, that's right.
Yeah, it didn't say read,
Anyone
so I
thinks
just
that,
took it as
they're
a,
not, no one's looking anyway, type of thing.
Yeah. If they
And
really
of course,
think
Oh, I
that.
finally
of
drove
course,
by your
the-
house.
The
What a
story is the
wonderful
same every
location.
time. All I intended to do.
oh my goodness, and just a straight shot to the courthouse,
right.
and that's awesome.
you just roll down the hill.
Maybe that's how you justified it when you did it the first time.
Right.
Clearly that left
We
your
can
head.
read the comment. She's not going to speak. She
Okay.
came to watch the,
Yeah, it didn't say
See, these
anything
things
in the
that go on for
email, so
years
did
and
she
go,
say she wanted us to read it?
I said,
It
are
doesn't
you
look good for
here
anybody.
to make
Yeah,
public
so
comment, or do you want us
convicted of the
to?
crime of procrastination.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Which is appropriate.
Would you do the honors then,
I
Mr.
can certainly do that.
Mr. York?
Oh, I don't have an address, though.
Chell, what is, if we're gonna read, your email during public comment, James can do that, but we would like just a physical address to reference as well?
Like a what?
A physical
Your
address?
address.
Oh, 738 Camp, Summer Camp,
Yep.
20 Road, Grand Marais.
Thank you.
All right.
Sure, thank you.
Good morning, by the way.
Good morning. Nice to see you all.
It's good to see you as well.
See you.
And, oh, Molly stepped out. I keep forgetting that I changed my, my clock on my computer, so it's, yeah, it's accurate. Well, maybe we will start. Molly will be right back, I'm sure. Good morning. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Cook County Board of Commissioners to order on this Tuesday, September 28th, 2021 at 8:33 a.m. Please rise and join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be more careful with my chair.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda this morning?
Mr. Chair, I just would like to note that we did have to add one item to the agenda under the administrator section, and that relates to the hiring of a new planning and zoning administrator.
Okay. Thank you. So that'll be item 7C, which is on our updated online agenda, so that's handy. Any other adjustments? Else, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I will motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalson. We have a motion. Is there support?
Starley support.
Thank you, Commissioner Storley. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the public comment period, which is an opportunity for anyone from the public to speak before the board. Limited to 5 minutes, and please keep it respectful. I don't think we have anyone here to speak, but we do have some written communication.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. We did receive an email from Chell Anderson and John Alt, who reside at 738 Camp 20 Road in Grand Marais. Excuse me. And they write, Dear Commissioners, we appreciate the commitment you all have made to governing the county and representing us, Commissioners Folson in particular, by serving as county commissioners. We recognize it's challenging, demanding, and time-intensive, and we value and appreciate your work. We are writing to express how delighted we are to see that the board agenda for September 28th includes a presentation about the Icelandite coastal fen, and the board will have the opportunity to support its designation as a scientific and natural area. The appropriate level of recognition and protection of this public land. We are in full and enthusiastic support of the SNA designation, critical to ensure this rare, ecologically and biologically important coastal fen will be conserved as part of Cook County and Minnesota's remarkable natural heritage. Many thanks for your attention. And that is all the submitted comment that we have.
All right. Are there any other public comments at this point? Hearing or seeing none, I'll close the public comment period, and that moves us on to the consent agenda. Are there any items a commissioner would like to pull from the consent agenda? Else, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. Is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallowson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. That moves us on to item number 4, Indigenous Peoples Day. And we have the original proclamation, which was dated October 12th, 2015. And now we have another proclamation for October 11th of 2021 this year. And I would like to just read that at this point. Whereas Cook County, Minnesota recognizes that the indigenous peoples of the lands that would later become known as the Americas have occupied these lands since time immemorial. And whereas Cook County, Minnesota recognizes that Cook County is built upon and shares the homelands and villages of the indigenous peoples of this region, without whose knowledge, labor, technology, science, philosophy, arts, and deep cultural contribution, the building of the county and the county's character would not have been possible. And whereas Cook County has a responsibility to oppose the systemic racism and misunderstanding towards indigenous people in the United States, which perpetuates poverty and income inequality and erodes access to health, education, and social stability. And whereas Indigenous Peoples Day was first proposed in 1977 by a delegation of Native nations to the United Nations, sponsored International Conference on Discrimination Against Indigenous Populations in the Americas, now therefore be it resolved that the Cook County, Minnesota Board does hereby proclaim the following. Indigenous Peoples Day shall be an opportunity to celebrate the thriving cultures and positive values of the indigenous peoples of our region. Indigenous Peoples Day shall be used to reflect upon the ongoing struggles of indigenous people, to celebrate the thriving culture and value that indigenous nations add to our county. The second Monday in October shall be recognized exclusively as Indigenous Peoples Day in Cook County. And I think we just need a motion to make that proclamation.
I move, Mr. Chair, to approve the resolution as written.
And is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you. I have motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Commissioners. And that moves us right along to item number 5. We have a presentation by Molly Roski. Is that how you pronounce your last name? Yeah, from the Minnesota DNR about the Icelandite coastal fen SNA. Would you like to come to a microphone closer? Yeah. Good morning, by the way.
Good morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you.
Should I proceed?
Yes, please. Yeah, go right ahead.
I trust you all have had an opportunity to review the materials regarding our proposal that the Icelandite Coastal Fen site be acquired by the Minnesota DNR from the Minnesota Department of Transportation and designated as a scientific and natural area, which would confer significant protections on the site, being that it is one of only 2 fens immediately adjacent to the North Shore of Lake Superior in Minnesota, and it has significant rare populations on the site. It is also a site on which MnDOT does not currently pay any payment in lieu of taxes, and which the DNR would initiate payments on, which would be calculated at $2 per acre. So since it's a 25.12 acre site, that would be about $50 and a quarter. And so we feel that there is a strong case to be made that this site be designated as a scientific and natural area, adding to the system of lands across the state of scientific and natural areas, of which there are just shy of 170 right now, protecting about 200,000 acres of the state's most imperiled, most significant natural heritage, rare and endangered species, native plant communities in each of our state's ecological subsections, ecoregions essentially. Anything you can think of as special about Minnesota is protected in a scientific and natural area, and they protect the crown jewels of natural places in our state. And so we'd like to turn this 25-acre piece of significant wetlands and significant habitat into another one of the state's scientific and natural areas. So at this time, I'd love to take any questions you might have about that. At my request, the map showing you specific locations of those rare populations was excluded from the published agenda materials, but I hope that it made it into your hands so you can see sort of where those rare populations are. That was left out due to the fact that we do mention what those species are in the handout that was published, and because we do that, we probably shouldn't publish to the public the specific locations of them because of our need for that to be retained as not public data. But for the purposes of conservation of those species, that was made available to you. So I think that's sort of the end of the points that I wished to make. You have most, if not all of that information at your fingers already. So at this time, I'd love to take any questions you might have.
Thank you. Could you talk a little bit more about just SNAs and the restrictions there and just other factors we might want to be privy to?
Sure. So I suppose I should have introduced myself. My name is Molly Roski, and I am actually the statewide supervisor of the Scientific and Natural Areas Program for the DNR. I'm located in Duluth, and due to some staff shortages, these types of things would normally be covered by local regional staff. But right now we have some of those folks filling other gaps in other parts of the workforce in the Scientific and Natural Areas Program. So
that sounds familiar to us.
sort of the name of the game right now.
Yeah.
Scientific and natural areas were first established by the Minnesota legislature as part of the system of lands of the outdoor recreation system. That legislation was passed in 1969. The first SNA was designated in 1974. These are sites which permanently protect the ecosystems and the values of that site in perpetuity. And the Scientific and Natural Areas Program is the cadre of staff within the Department of Natural Resources who protect and manage those sites across the state. Up here in the Northland, that doesn't involve too much other than ensuring that those populations remain on site and removing invasive species. But in some of our southwestern, more prairie-dominated parts of the state, that requires very active management, right, to replicate disturbance regimes of prescribed fire and those kinds of things. We have a number of peatland sites across the north of the state as well. SNAs protect. Our goal is, in our strategic land protection plan, is laid out to protect 5 instances of every native plant community in every ecoregion of the state, and at least 3 populations of every species. And that gets tricky when we come to our endangered and threatened species, right? Because they're already rare. And so that's our goal, is to make sure that nothing is lost from Minnesota's natural heritage, that all of our native species remain extant on the landscape. And so scientific and natural areas provide that space. The visitor does not need a parks pass. They do not need a hunting license. You don't need anything to visit a scientific and natural area. You just need a leave no trace ethic and a light on the land approach. So some SNAs have specific rules that allow certain exceptions to Minnesota Rule 6136, which dictates what is and is not allowed on an SNA. Most SNAs only allow low to zero impact uses that include walking, skiing, snowshoeing, nature photography, bird watching, those kinds of things. There are a couple of sites where, for example, pre-existing bike trails or snowmobile trails need to be written into the rules. In this case, the Superior Hiking Trail traverses the site, and so our proposed public use exceptions here would adhere to those allowed by the Superior Hiking Trail, which include dogs on leash. So has that addressed your question about sort of the grand sweep
Yeah.
of the overview of scientific and
Yeah,
natural areas?
yeah.
Okay. We call them SNAs, so if I
Yep.
call it SNA for short, that's what I'm referring to.
That's what I'll do too. I'll call it SNA. That's easy. Well, can you speak at all about how, I mean, I certainly recognize the importance of SNAs and have had the opportunity to visit, well, I don't know how many different ones around the state and over my life, but I guess what I'm not as familiar with is just like if there's impacts for adjacent property owners or just kind of those other land issues that we should be aware of, or if it's just strictly with this, in this case, the 25-acre site, if that's just kind of the only impacts we should really be focused on.
Yeah, that's a good question. Minnesota Rule 6132 is a rule regarding the mining of non-ferrous metallic minerals in the state of Minnesota, and this recently came up in another county. That rule contains setbacks for mineral mining of ores and things, and that's a quarter mile around the outline of an SNA. However, given the nature of this site, right on the shore, endangered species on site, Minnesota, Highway 61 runs right past it, that is unlikely to impact this particular site.
Yeah.
And that rule does not include any exclusions for example, aggregate surface mining. So that's not covered. There's not that quarter mile setback of a buffer around the SNA.
Okay.
So in our mind, there is essentially nothing that the establishment of this SNA would prevent surrounding land use from doing that wouldn't already be precluded by other realities of the site.
Yeah. Thank you for addressing that, and that's very exciting. Are there any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, I had to look up the word fin, because I didn't know what fin meant.
My apologies. I
No,
should
that's
have explained
okay.
that.
Well, they're wetlands with moderate to low fertility, and it was a good description on Google, so that I was satisfied with that. This is quite a nice piece of acreage. I take it there are no dwellings or houses in that area?
Correct.
Yeah, and there never will be.
Correct.
Right. So how is this kind of taken care of? Does somebody kind of pop in once in a while just to make sure the fertility is looking good and all of that?
That's a great question. So the site is greater than 25 acres, right? As the map displays, it goes think it's a 500 some odd foot setback from the end of the section line, section 6, and it ends before you hit the east line of section 6. Those bookends are used by campers, primarily as part of the DNR's State Water Trail there along the north shore of Lake Superior. That is excluded from what the SNA would be acquiring and designating. In terms of what the management of the actual SNA site would look like, yes, it would involve local staff coming in to check on it now and then. Also, an interesting program that we have is our core of volunteer SNA site stewards, and it's sort of like the Adopt a Highway program. There's usually a local person who might express interest in becoming the official site steward of an SNA. And actually, because this SNA was first proposed back in 1998, we still have a few folks who expressed interest along the way in the last 23 years. To be the site stewards once this site becomes an SNA. And so that individual or couple or maybe 3 people typically have the will to stop in, check the site, ensure that there's no excluded or prohibited activities, ensure no one's dumping trash, ensure no one's illegally camping, ensure there's no sign of increasing invasive species populations, those kinds of things. And so we as a SNA program staff across the state rely heavily on our site stewards to be logging those observations. We have a system where they can log in and log their hours, log observations. It's actually pretty fun because every quarter we send out an electronic newsletter, and at the end of all of our electronic newsletters are fun little reports that we've gotten from our site stewards in the last few months. And sometimes they're actually helping us hone in on some really significant stuff that's going on site. So we rely on those folks as well.
Mm-hmm. Is there any possibility of education going on for the general public?
Definitely. SNAs that are designated as public use units, which this one would be, are open to scientific and educational opportunities, provided that they remain low impact, right? We have restrictions on group size, for example, just to ensure that the impact is low. Being that the Superior Hiking Trail already crosses this site, there, I think, are increased opportunities because it enhances the public's ability to traverse the site in a way that does not further impact the site. And so, yes, definitely, there would be educational opportunities and research opportunities. And we do have an SNA naturalist in the Northeast who covers many of the sites around here, and including many along the North Shore. And we already have partnerships with other local entities. For example, Sugarloaf Cove Nature Center. We collaborate often with the naturalists there and with various school groups and things. So there are definitely opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. You know, we have to thank the glacier for coming down this way. Because down my way, we have an area called the Butterworts.
Yeah.
You know, and that's fabulous. You know, to be able to have that going back thousands of years still existing. So I'm sure this area must be fairly old, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, could you leave your contact with somebody?
Definitely.
Okay.
I have been in touch with Ms. Zimmer and Commissioner Swallison as well.
Good.
So I'd be happy to leave my information with you if you would like.
Sure. Great, thank you.
Yeah, and some of Commissioner Starley's questions kind of triggered other thoughts in my head. And just, you know, we've had a significant increase in visitors in the last couple of years. I mean, for many years, but we felt it more acutely in the last couple of years. And it's led to some challenges on some MnDOT properties, and we've been navigating that a little bit. And I know MnDOT is not in the best position to manage lands and visitors as much as the DNR. And so, whereas, you know, I think the site stewards are a very valuable and an important resource, I'm hoping that the DNR at large will be better able to help manage some of these public lands, and maybe not in this particular case, but I just really value the partnership with the DNR and want to do more to strengthen that partnership. So just some of those questions brought that to mind. But are there any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank you. This is more of a comment than a question, but I want to thank you for protecting the fen. I've had an opportunity to visit there, be introduced to it a number of years ago, and it's just a very, very special place. The black spruce, the pitcher plants, and I am so glad it's going to be now at a different level of protection than it has been. So thank you very much.
Oh, please, Molly. Yep.
If I may respond to that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think perhaps getting back to some of the comments made by Commissioner Mills a moment ago, it is through the designation of the site as an SNA that our DNR conservation officers really have the backing of the rules that are in place to enforce certain things on the site. Absent that designation, DNR conservation officers cannot really be involved in helping MnDOT, ensure that the public is using the site in a reasonable way that is low impact. And so it's really through this designation that we can engage our conservation officers, who will then have the backing, be able to point to the rules sign and say, what you're doing is not allowed. Can we get you to stop doing that? And I also wanted to recognize retired Minnesota Biological Survey botanist Tel Anderson, who's in the room today, who was instrumental in helping us understand and protect this site. So,
Commissioner Hawkins, you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, thank you. So I was reading a lot about SNAs lately. So I'm asking, how much did you pay for this land from MnDOT?
well, we haven't purchased it yet. By statute, we require having county board approval first before we can close on a site. But yes, we have gone through a price negotiation process and have made an offer. The total sum paid to MnDOT for the site is $300,000.
And in the packet, it said that the standard sources of funding were not available. What are your standard sources of funding?
The SNA program routinely goes before LCCMR, which is the Legislative Citizen Commission on Minnesota Resources. That's the lottery money. And the Lassard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Commission, that is legacy amendment money, for grants that help us not only manage the sites we do have, but some funds to acquire new sites. However, the stipulations on those funds are that those bodies do not want those public funds to be used to acquire lands that are already in the public land ownership. And so in this case, it was a state-to-state transfer. Part of the reason that this acquisition has taken so long is that at the outset, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, it was thought that this could be, a no-cost transfer of state land. I'm not sure where along the line, this predates my tenure with the DNR, MnDOT decided that they needed compensation for it. And so we struggled to come up with the funding, I will be frank with you, but through a combination of RIM funds, and RIM is the Reinvest in Minnesota dollars that come from places like the license plate checkoffs and tax opt-ins, those kinds of things. Through a combination of our RIM credits that the SNA program holds. Oh, I should mention that the other major source of RIM credits is when a property owner donates land to the SNA program. That generates an equivalent number of dollars in RIM credits that are sort of in our bank of RIM credits. So we're spending a significant number of our RIM credits. The Nature Conservancy has donated some of their RIM credits. And SNA staff were successful in acquiring a Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, or GLRI, grant from the EPA. So we have $100,000 in GLRI funding to acquire this site as well. So we had to work hard to find the funds.
I was going to say, pardon my sarcasm, that sounds simple, huh?
Let's see, sorry. So can you go back to the beach area? Are you saying that's not included? I mean, it's a pretty wide beach area, and there's watercraft camping available there. Is that campsite still available?
Yeah, so what I meant by exclusions were not anything excluded toward the water, but exclusions on the far east and west end of that strip. And so if you're looking at your map, part of it is just like diagonal slant lines. That's what we would be acquiring as SNA. And then the parts where it's sort of cross-hatching, those are the bookends on either extremity that would be excluded. But yes, the SNA would go to the water. However, my understanding is that that's sort of a part of where the Superior Hiking Trail crosses. So we wouldn't be, it's pretty hard to put an SNA boundary sign into a cobble beach and expect it to stay there. So our signage would probably be a little set back. We'd figure that out as SNA staff. But the SNA, yes, would go down to the water line. Sorry, it would go down to the ordinary high water level, not excluding what's considered part of the public waters there.
So where the Kelly's Hill Road is, and then right across, there's a road to drive down, and there's campsite there and
That
parking.
campsite would be excluded. On the, let's see, east end of that campsite, then the SNA boundary would be put in place. And then go east, go east, go east. Before you hit the next campsite on the eastern end would be the other end of the SNA,
Okay.
and then you'd have the other campsites and other recreational uses that are in use right now. Does that make sense? Have I addressed your question?
Okay. That helps clarify for me. When I was out there yesterday and walked the area and was looking at things, so I just wanted to make sure I understood your boundaries.
Yep.
So SNAs, they say no picnicking, no swimming, no picking rocks or throwing rocks. And I'm like, that's kind of odd for Lake Superior. People are down there enjoying the shore. Are you saying in that area you're going to have signs saying you can't do that?
No.
Okay.
So much of that beach, I'm not sure on the survey where the actual line is, but much of that beach would be covered by the public waters, so it would not be excluded. SNAs do not override riparian rights and access to public waterways, let's say. But SNAs themselves typically do not allow picnicking because of the potential for significant impact to sensitive plant populations. And things like swimming, we try and ensure that the public isn't doing too much of that because it involves the picnicking. But again, at this site, it's a beach site. Much of that would be covered by the public waters domain, so it wouldn't be excluded by the SNA, if that makes sense.
Okay, and
And regarding the rock component, rock collecting is what's prohibited on an SNA. So folks can't fill their pockets and leave, is what we like to make sure the public is aware of. And if necessary, we can install DNR-approved signage that says things like no rock collecting at the extremities of the site, so folks aren't filling their pockets or their bags and leaving with their pockets full. That said, there's going to be those end caps on either end where the public can engage in any and all of those activities without consequence. So
I'm just a little uncomfortable with the wording of the resolution in our packet today without having more details of what's allowed, what's not allowed, where's exactly the lines, and I just would like to see a little more detail because sometimes we approve things and then later say, oh, I didn't know they were going to not let that happen, or it stretched farther than what I thought, so. But thank you for answering my question. So, yeah, I guess that was, so the parking on the road below Kelly's Hill and the parking, the paved parking out on the other end are still going to be there? There's no gates, there's no...
they would be excluded from the boundaries of the SNA, and there would be no change to their use.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Swalson, did I see any sign from, okay. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you. I guess at this point, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Commissioner, Commissioner Mills?
Yep.
I would motion to approve DNR to acquire and designate 25-acre Icelandite coastal fen as scientific and natural area.
Thank you, Commissioner Svalson. We have a motion. Is there support?
Sterling support.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? I guess for clarification, Commissioner Hawkins, I'm not clear on which further clarification you would like in the resolution. Just specific uses and, like, do you want the language of an SNA in the resolution? Or is that your ideal, or what were you thinking?
Well, I'm just concerned that, according to what I read about SNAs, that the commissioner can make the rules whenever they want.
The Commissioner of Land, or DNR Commissioner?
DNR commissioner, whatever. Somebody gets to make rules for each specific SNA. And I hate approving something without laying out what exactly those rules are.
For myself, I'm no SNA expert, but I, as you, maybe not as thoroughly as you did some research, and I'm not as uncomfortable with that, and I guess have, as I said, hopes to strengthen partnerships with the DNR, and so I see this as an opportunity to engage and partner, and a part of that is kind of, here you go, let's do this and make it good, so there's maybe a certain level of trust there that, and I know,
And I do not have that trust with the DNR, sorry.
Yes, no, you and I have
I'm more
had
skeptical.
conversations of our different takes on trust.
Yes.
So, yeah, I think it's just a difference in approach. Are there some further specific issues you wanted addressed, I guess, in this, or you're just saying kind of all of it needs more specifics?
Yeah, I guess I want to see the actual, this is the SNA, this is what's allowed, this is what's not allowed. This is the boundary, this is where our signs will go to say you can't walk here, or you can't participate here.
And I don't know if that level of detail is something we would normally have in a resolution. I think that's just kind of, the resolution supports the SNA, and then the SNA kind of stands alone and does that. But again, I'm no SNA expert. And are there, do other commissioners have some concerns along these lines, or not? Nothing strong. Attorney Hicken, you had your hand up as well.
Well, I have some more information. This is just from statute, and I'm sure Molly also knows about this. But there are restricted uses and acts, and this might be where Commissioner Hawkins is coming from. On scientific and natural areas, there is no camping and picnicking, no burning, no disposal of garbage, swimming, boating, fishing, hunting, trapping, etc. And I guess that aligns with the purpose of a scientific and natural area, which is preservation of it in its natural state, I would assume. But just to support what Commissioner Hawkins is saying here, that there are going to be certain acts that are prohibited on this land by nature of its designation.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know, please correct me, Commissioner Hawkins. You're not uncomfortable with necessarily the prohibitions, but just in the resolution, you're less comfortable with the spelling those things out?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm uncomfortable with the way we just say, these 25 acres are SNA now. And for $50 a year, I'm like, really? Kids can't go down there and swim because a DNR conservation officer is going to I certainly want to protect our lands and that's not that's not the problem.
Yeah.
Like I said, I walked down there. I
Yep.
see nothing on that beach area. I went up to the bank and looked over and saw, yeah, there's a fen here, and it's beautiful. It
Yeah.
is beautiful. Yes, I want to save that.
Yep.
But for 23 years, this has been in the works, and it hasn't been destroyed yet. I just want to make sure I'm not shutting down more public land to the people that live here and use that parcels.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm not familiar with it being a swimming destination as much as more of just a unique area that's visited from those, I guess, primarily on the trail. But I do know there's a lot of use on the other stretches that are more accessible. So I don't have concerns about that as much. I was just trying to really figure out if we needed more detail here. But I think just based on the statute that S&As are pretty clearly defined, and then the boundaries are clearly defined in the resolution. So myself, I feel pretty comfortable with that, and I'll just leave it there, I guess. I just thank you for clarifying some of your concerns. Well, that was a lot more further discussion. Any more further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes 4-1. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was item 5 on our agenda today. Moving down to item 6, the auditor. We have Hovland Firehall request, Auditor Powers.
And Mr. Chairman,
And Commissioner Swalson.
as a member of the Hovland Fire Department Board, I will recuse myself from this conversation and vote.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Swalson. Appreciate that. Auditor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a request from the Hovland Fire Department for an additional $100,000 loan for their new fire hall. If you remember, they came to us July 2020 and asked for approval of up to $400,000 for construction of the fire hall. They knew at that time that they may be coming back again, or at least they expressed it to me, and indeed they have. They said they've experienced some overages, $65,000 as of right now over their budget. They're not complete. They don't expect any more overruns, but they didn't expect these, of course. So they're asking for the up to $500,000 total, so that they don't have to come back again. They're quite sure that that'll cover it. The overages were for an additional garage door for one drive-through truck bay and a wider door between truck bays in the office area, that was $10,000. Increase in foundation and slab costs due to supply chain issues. We've heard of those for many things this last year, including the ready mix price increase and a floor drain increase. That was approximately $40,000, and an increase in excavation due to unforeseen site conditions. They found an old sawmill site buried. It was larger and deeper than they expected, and significantly more excavation, and that was about $15,000. So they expect the excavation, et cetera, to be completed by, it should be complete now, by September 15th, and they hope to finish this by late October. Anticipating the obvious question, the fund balance, because that was the discussion when we first approved it. So right now, including $500,000 for this loan, including the $500,000 for the septic loans, including the two payments that we potentially would have to pay the federal government for the BWCA that we've held back out of our budget. All of that, with that taken out of our 2020, that's our last confirmed fund balance, with it taken out of that, now our unassigned is at 85% with all of those. And that leaves us with unassigned in excess of 75%. That's our goal of $1,129,000 with all of those. That's the 2020 balance. And just, I looked at the cash balances of our major funds yesterday, and we are ahead significantly. It's mid-year, it's September, so it's just an indication. The trend is very positive in the general fund, the highway, and social services again. It's likely that between the three of those, there will be another, some significant increase in that fund balance for 2021. Just to give you that perspective. We're not going in the wrong direction, but we're going in we seem to be trending in the right direction as far as that goes. So.
Thank you, Auditor Powers. Any questions for Brady? Mr. Hawkins, please.
So how much is the payment from the volunteer fire department for the loan? How does that get paid and how much is it?
It's what we approved was a 20-year loan. It's basically, now it'll be, if you approve it, it'll be up to $500,000. So you can just, divide, it's going to be like $25,000 a year.
And where do those funds come from? Commissioner Swallison?
From, this is going to be
Yes.
from their levy or other sources, donations, fundraisers, et cetera. They anticipated last time that they would not have a large increase in that, as I recall.
And so this has been budgeted then and approved by the people that live in Hovland? Is that how this works? I'm sorry, I don't know how this works.
This does not go to a vote of a fire department. It goes, it's a request. It's an action that they take as a volunteer fire department. Their levy gets approved by this board, so it will come back here for your approval rather than the voters there. They would, their voice would be heard through their commissioner, obviously.
Okay.
And so I cannot tell you specifically how they will do that, but their request for next year is, I did not bring that with me, but it is not significantly larger.
Okay, that's what I wondered,
Yeah.
how this impacts the citizens of Hovland.
Yeah, and that's with the 400,000 that they submitted it. I don't know if they were thinking of the 500 at that time, but when they submitted it to us, I think it's within $1,000 of last year.
Okay, just, thank you.
No, that's.
I have
those
so
are-
much to
Those are
learn.
good questions, and this comes up periodically because every fire department goes through this. Every so many years. We've done it with Lutzen, we've done it with Gunflint, and they've all anticipated and they manage it. They have fairly significant budgets and they have some maneuverability over the things that they buy and how they plan that. There's a lot of equipment purchases and things like that, and I just assume that they make adjustments and they think about it in advance, because that's come out in their plans. So.
Thank you.
Commissioner Storley.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, this building has been in the process for a long time. And, these are a few things to kind of bring it all together and finish it off. I don't think they expected to find a buried sawmill on the site, but, you start digging, you never know what kind of bones you're going to find. So, they're not a township, so they don't bring it before the people. If it was a township, then it could be brought before the people and discussed and so forth. But it's up to us to make the final decision. And when everything is said and done, they'll be able to have a pancake breakfast just like the rest of us in the West.
Any further questions or comments from commissioners? Any glasses? I think so. The only comment I would add is that and this isn't, I guess, necessarily specific to this request, but I do appreciate Auditor Powers' the perspective on where the unassigned fund balance is and just where things fall, because as previous concerns have been brought up by commissioners about some of these requests for loans, it's just really important to keep it all in perspective, to keep an eye on kind of everything and where that's at. And so I really appreciate that. And I know it's using the 2020 audit and it's a moving, but it gives us some perspective. And as we get down to the 85% mark, when I saw over 100%, in our previous discussions, that can be pretty alarming and can rile people up. And so getting it closer and tighter to that 75%, I think is, it can make me a little less comfortable, but also it's showing kind of fiscal responsibility in that we're keeping things tighter. And the way that we're doing that, or the projects that we're using these for, really does have broad community impacts and just really positive opportunities for our community members. So I'm just really grateful for that perspective, and then also the board's perspective and how we're going about this. So
And it's a savings on the building of it, the financing. The bank rates are low. They're not that low.
Sure.
Obviously.
Yep.
So we're providing, and it really doesn't cost us that much because we don't earn that much by state law. So
Yep.
The trade-off is pretty good, I think.
Yep. Yeah, and this is I think a perfect example of how our funds can and should be used to support the broader community. So very good. Okay, nothing else? Then I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Sullivan.
I'd like to move to approve to add $100,000 to the Hovland Volunteer Fire Department Firehall Loan Fund for a total of $500,000.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Starley, support.
Thank you, Commissioner Starley. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. And noted Commissioner Swalson abstained. We have the motion passing 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're on to item 6B, the airport crack seal grant approval.
Yeah, this is, in a sense, it's a formality, but it's required one, and an important one. The FAA has approved the funding for the crack seal project, which is now complete and very positive from what I hear. But the state manages those funds. They do in all cases with the airport FAA grants. So this is the grant agreement with the state to manage those funds and get us our reimbursement. It's a 100% FAA funded project. So. And there's a resolution that you're actually approving for that state fund, and that will allow the board chair and auditor to sign the grant.
Woohoo. Thank you. Any questions for Auditor Powers? Else, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Sullivan.
I'd like to move to approve by resolution a grant agreement with MnDOT to administer $99,744 of the FAA funds for the crack seal project at the airport.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Swallowson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Auditor Powers. Moving on to item 7, Administrator. Administrator Yorkie.
Okay. These first two items under my section concern a couple of presentations that you all received at the last committee of the whole meeting last week, and there are two requests for abatements. The first one is from Sawbill Village. This is a mixed-use development that would include 6 ADA accessible housing units on top of retail space. And I just wanted to let you know, we did have some follow-up conversations with the project sponsor toward the end of last week. And Brady and I had some questions about some of the assumptions in the pro forma, and we talked to Rob Dieter, and he has revised that pro forma. There are still some outstanding questions that we're working through, mainly the term of the abatement, because typically statute allows only for a 15-year maximum term. There are circumstances under which a 20-year term can be allowed if we approach the other taxing jurisdictions and request their participation in an abatement and they decline, then that can create the option for extending it 20 years. But typically it's a 15-year term. And so we're working with the project sponsor to define exactly what the request is going to be. And we'll provide updated documents once that's resolved. So this request is to set a hearing date. As the agenda item indicates, materials related to this request are on the county's website already under the agenda for the September 21st Committee of the Whole meeting. And I'll pause there.
Thank you, Administrator York. Any questions from Commissioners? Commissioner Storley?
Oh, thank you. I'm just wondering about, you're only allowing 10 minutes in between each. Is there a reason for that?
Well, I wasn't sure how to structure that. I mean, we can't foresee exactly how long people are going to need to give comments. So I thought it would be better to set a shorter interval so that people are here on time for the second hearing.
And that's a good question. And when we set the public hearing, we cannot start it before.
No.
We can, though, start it late. Is that correct? And so,
So if the first one goes for a half hour, obviously then it puts the second one off for a period of time. So
Yep.
is that the way it'll work?
yeah,
Okay.
but that is allowable in statute to,
Yeah.
just we can't start it
No. Right.
early is
Right.
the catch.
Yeah. Okay.
Good question. Yes.
And I should note, these items A and B are kind of reversed because I intended for B to be first on the agenda since it has the earlier hearing start time.
Oh.
Horse apiece there, though, eh?
Yep.
Any other questions, Commissioner Hawkins?
So, has Ellers received all of the documentations from both of these projects and reviewed, and
They have, and that review is underway.
when will we as commissioners and the public get to see that report? Or
Soon, and I think before the hearing would take place, although I'm not sure. We don't have a definite timeline for that.
Yeah, no, I expect, I asked for it prior to the hearing, and I expect they will do that.
Might it be,
Good.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, might it be the case that they would present for the hearing?
I think
Or is
they
that
will-
inappropriate? Yeah.
I don't know. I think
Okay.
they will do what we asked
Yeah.
them to do.
Well, I guess I'm
If
just
we-
asking, is that
Yeah.
something that would be appropriate? Because that would be a good, I'm assuming interested parties would be here, and to have that presentation laid out, I think would be valuable, and then we could ask questions, and I guess maybe not at the hearing asking questions.
We did, we talked with Bruce just yesterday morning,
Yeah.
Bruce Kimmel with Ellers, and he did indicate a willingness to participate in meetings and answer any questions that you all might have, so.
Yeah, I don't know, I wouldn't expect that presentation, I guess, at the hearing itself, but,
Well,
but
yeah.
I can ask.
I'm thinking out loud, of course.
Right.
I'm just wondering if it would be valuable to maybe have Eller's presentation before the hearings, and then people could take that in and then give their thoughts during the hearing. I wouldn't think you'd want to give their thoughts and then have the presentation. That would be backwards in my mind, but, yeah, it's, the hearing aspect of it is just for us to take it all in. And so I would like to share before that, but you think we could schedule that way?
I think we should ask him what's normal first.
Okay,
and
sure.
And maybe go beyond that, if it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Well, if that's the case, if that's a possibility, yeah, Commissioner Storley.
Thank you. Well, I'm just thinking, the public hearing is for us to get the information. We don't do any action, right?
The
Will
public,
they expect decisions?
I
No.
think our timeline is pretty short, and
Yeah,
so
right.
it wouldn't be in the hearing, it would be
Right.
after the hearing, but I would expect we still need to
Well,
approve.
if that's the case, I think we need to have some, at least highlights of what everybody's thinking from Ellers.
Oh, yeah.
Rather than getting it cold turkey that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's the plan, to get it
Yeah,
prior.
okay.
Before, but I'm just thinking to share it all, it's
Oh.
a good avenue,
Right.
to share it all, but Commissioner Swalson.
Just point of order, are we going to be actually making a decision during a committee of the whole meeting?
Oh, thank you. No. That was not my intention. Thank you for pointing that out on the 12th there.
So,
Thought being, if we were going,
well,
excuse
the
me, if
12th
we were
is-
going to be scheduling another meeting, the notices for that type of thing. I just,
The 12th is a regular meeting.
what's a regular meeting? Thank you very much. I heard it referred to as a committee of the whole.
And that was the
Sprinkled
previous.
last week.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But
Oh,
that,
Thank you.
I
That
just
clears
got-
that up.
I just got
Had it
caught up in
stuck in
that
my
too. Yeah. So what I was wondering was if we should maybe push the times of these hearings back a little bit so that we could potentially have a presentation before them. That's where I was trying to go. Does that make sense to everybody?
It does.
Okay. How far back do you suppose?
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Is
please.
it possible for us to set the date for the public hearing without the specific times to allow flexibility, or do we need to set those specific times now? Okay.
Yep, yep.
Just- Thank you.
Yeah, no, good question. And yeah, part of statute requires us to have a specific time, place, topic, and date.
Thank you.
Yeah.
so, Mr. Chairman, I might propose then that we set the first hearing to occur at 9 a.m., which would enable us to have a presentation from Ellers if they are able to do that beforehand. And then, and that way, there is that window of time to get that presentation if that's how we do it. And then set the second hearing for, say, 9:10, so that if there's a lot of discussion, at least people who are here for the second hearing will be present for it.
Yeah, I think, in my mind, that works okay. And as I said, we can be late with the public hearing, we just can't be early. It just depends on how much public comment we have, but if it's the first item on the agenda, if it's item 4, beyond the consent agenda, then that, I think, could work. Does anyone see any snags with that?
Seems reasonable.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I just think we need as much time as we
Yes.
can, because this is a pretty deep subject that we've not dealt with.
Yeah, and, part of what our committee of the whole discussion was around was about some of those numbers and just trying to process that, and also trying to understand the process, because we, us board has not done this before. And incorporating it with our new tax abatement policy as well, just getting everything to line up and mesh, and the timeline, of course, for the MHFA potential support makes everything kind of tricky here. I had a further thought. anyways. I agree. Well, I guess where I was going with that is that, we have reviewed these projects, or we have been reviewing and these projects, and so, it's just all part of that process is being familiar with it. So there's only so far we can go before, we need to make some kind of determination, so.
And the determination will be all the feedback we get from Ellers
Yes.
and from all of the other entities
And the
involved.
public, yeah.
you know, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So we've had some opportunities for us to look at these numbers and these projects, try to process that and see how it all works. And then, it's very important that we share and answer questions as much as possible. And then, again, having the expertise of others, we'll build on that, and then getting the input from the public. So it feels crunched, but it feels doable. So my comfort level is,
So Brady,
yeah.
Brady, we've never had two different businesses come before us in a long time, have we, for tax abatement?
Never.
Never, okay.
Never this is the first for this
Yeah.
kind of, someone came here many decades ago and it wasn't approved, so these will
Yeah.
be the first if they are approved.
Right.
But the TIF was the only thing similar, that was in the
Mhm.
early 90s, and there were 4 of them that got TIF approvals, but that, I don't think it was all on the same day either. Maybe a couple of them were.
Okay. Well, it'll be our new
historic.
challenge.
Yep.
Well, and, I'd say there's still significant stigma around tax abatements, because of maybe some horror stories of, in the far past, and not even necessarily in this area. And so I feel like we're working through that, and part of what helped me was just attending those kind of mini sessions with Ellers and learning more about it and the process. And my comfort there got really strong. It's just when it comes, when the rubber hits the road here, that's where my comfort, because of my lack of experience,
Yeah.
where it wavers. So, but again, the whole trust and trusting in Ellers and trusting in the public to give their perspective is what I'm leaning on here. So. All right, well, so it sounds like 9 and 9:10 might be good target times. So I would entertain a motion for that. Or if someone had other times or other thoughts.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Commissioner Sullivan.
So I move to recommend the October 12th presentation by Ellers, followed by a 9 o'clock Tofte downtown presentation, and the hearing at 9:10 for Sawbill Village.
Thank you, Commissioner Sullivan. We have a motion. Is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. So that's both items 7A and 7B, as a matter of fact. So we're on to item 7C.
Okay, and this, as I noted at the beginning of the meeting, is a late addition to the agenda. As you know, Bill Lane resigned from his position as zoning administrator, and we have been working to recruit a candidate for that position. Interviews were held, and we had some really strong candidates, and we are proposing to make an offer to Neva from Lake County. And so the reason that this is a late addition to the agenda is she and her family would like to begin looking for housing in Cook County and would like an approved offer from the board before they start talking to a realtor. So in the interest of facilitating that process and expediting it, we're requesting approval of this hire. And Tim Nelson, the Director of Land Services, is here to answer any questions that you might have. So,
Are there any questions for
should we
Tim?
take a break first?
Well played. I don't have a question. Commissioner Hawkins, I saw a hand.
I just have a curiosity question. Why, since Mr. Lane submitted his resignation on August 20th, we're not hearing about it until today?
It was an oversight. It was supposed to go on the last agenda.
Okay.
Good question.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Yep.
Odd to accept a resignation and hire on the same date, so.
Yeah, and I mean, as you know, our current HR director, Pamela, has been working 4 days a week, and we have a record number of active recruitments going on right now, so.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Looks like not so much, and so I'll entertain a motion. Oh, another question. I mean,
Sorry.
No, there's no motion on the
You know, I
table
didn't
here.
write it down. I have to write them down. How long has Ms. Maxwell been with Lake County? I'm just curious how experienced we are.
Nemo has been with Lake County for about between 4 and 5 years.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
as the Administrator Yorkie mentioned, we had an incredible slate of well-qualified candidates and excellent interviews. And Ms. Maxwell comes to us with, as she had even put it in the interview, fully loaded and ready to go. She has familiarity and working relationships with all of the entities, regional, specific to our Northeast region, land use entities, and just a very good working knowledge and experience of zoning. So we're very, very fortunate.
Yes, I thought it was fortunate to find somebody that was so close to home.
Yeah,
Indeed.
it's huge. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins, and thank you, Mr. Nelson. Any other questions? Thoughts, comments? Now, I'm still entertaining a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to accept the position at the Land Services from the position coming from Lake County, and her name is Nina?
Neva.
Okay.
Neva Maxwell.
Eva Maxwell, approve the hiring of zoning administrator, okay? Thank you, Commissioner Starley. Do we have a motion? Is there support?
Swallowson supports.
Thank you, Commissioner Swalson. We have a motion and support. Any further discussion? I'm very excited. I also feel very fortunate, so thank you, and thank you, Ms. Maxwell, for joining the team. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that moves us on to administrator updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. A few items this morning. The first is that I have followed up with Roger Reinert. Earlier this year, we talked about the need to develop a strategic plan for the organization, and we did attend the July AMC meeting in St. Paul, at which we received a presentation from Mr. Reinert, and I recall that that you all were impressed by his by his presentation, as I was as well. He has a consultancy and assists local governments in developing strategic plans, and he was not available to begin working with us until now. So we are going to be moving forward, and we are going to be convening a steering committee of folks internally to guide that work. That will consist of probably a couple of a couple of commissioners and several department heads and myself. Excuse me. And we are tentatively planning to have the first meeting of that group at the beginning of November. There would be a series of meetings. The first meeting would be to talk about mission and vision, kind of set a framework for the development of strategic objectives and action steps. And then over the subsequent months, probably at 6-week intervals, we would be having meetings to develop the objectives and to talk about action steps. The ultimate goal would be to have a draft of the strategic plan ready for the board to adopt in June of 2022. So roughly a 6-month process to, well, 8-month process, I guess, to get this done. So that's in process, and I just wanted you to be aware that that's moving forward. And if you have any questions about that, I will say part of the planning that we're doing right now is figuring out to what degree we are going to involve external stakeholders in providing feedback on this. Obviously, it's not a strategic plan for the county broadly, it's for county government. But we have a lot of important partners that we work with, and I think it's going to be very important to get their feedback and make sure that we're looking at our operations and scope of services from all angles. And getting that stakeholder feedback is going to be an important part of that examination. So I'll pause there and see if there are any questions.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. Next item I have is the application period for the Housing Redevelopment Authority Board of Directors has closed. Happy to report that we've gotten 16 applications, which is great, and we have some people with some really interesting and relevant experience in the areas of housing, public finance, strategic planning, and so my apologies for the cough. So we are going to be doing a review process of that. Similarly, we are going to be engaging representatives from the City of Grand Marais, from the EDA, and some internal county folks to do a preliminary review of those applications. And I expect we'll have a couple of commissioners involved in that process as well. And then we plan to bring forward recommendations at the October 13th meeting. We are going to, I'm in the process of creating. I'm sorry, 12.
Yeah.
Why don't, I've been doing that I've been doing that repeatedly for
I
the
tell
last
you,
week.
dates, times are not my strong suit, but just from our previous conversation,
Yeah.
it's in there, so.
You are correct, sir. October 12th. So at the October 12th meeting, we would ask the board to approve a slate of board of director members for the HRA. That will be a 5-member board, and its first task will be to set its bylaws so that it has a set of rules to operate by. And then, of course, the recruitment of the executive director will be a very important early step as well. Any questions on that item?
Great news.
Yes, very much so. Wanted to update you on the American Rescue Plan Act funding that we have received. As a reminder to folks who may be viewing, that's about $1,061,000, which can be used for a variety of purposes. We are looking at using it for continued COVID response and public health protection activities, possibly a broadband element in there. And then we're also looking at using the money for infrastructure to support new housing development. And so we had meetings back in June. The landscape at that point looked much different than it does today. That was before the surge related to the Delta variant of COVID-19. With the current surge that is going on, I have already had meetings with our public health staff and folks from the Sawtooth Mountain Clinic, the North Shore Health Hospital, and then also the public health service up in Grand Portage. And it looks like we're probably going to be allocating more money toward public health support and response than we were planning to in June, simply because we are now in a different situation with a lot more positive cases. And so The other stakeholder meetings that we're having will occur later this week. We've got 3 times set to meet with all the folks who were part of the meetings back in June. And my expectation is that we'll have a proposed budget to bring forward to you at the second business meeting in October, which 12 plus 14 is 26, so that would be October 26th, if I counted that correctly. So that's what's going on with ARP. The next thing I have is the compensation study that we're planning to conduct in the first part of 2022. We have gotten a proposal from David Drown and Associates to conduct that work, and they've set they set the proposal up in sort of an a la carte fashion so that we can choose the different elements that we want them to do for us. I think this is a really important step to be taking, not only because we're at 5 years past our last comp study, but also because the job market has changed significantly in the last couple of years since COVID started. And so making sure that we have competitive compensation packages for prospective staff is going to be super important in future recruitment efforts. So I'm looking forward to getting that underway. The next thing I have, on September 9th, I believe it was, President Biden announced a new requirement for COVID-19 vaccination. This is for federal agencies and private employers over 100 people, and I do believe it applies to local governments as well. And so we are awaiting guidance from Minnesota OSHA to understand how that is going to be applied locally. I do know that Minnesota OSHA has a requirement that any new federal requirements, that those who are subject to those requirements comply within 75 days of issuance of the rule. And so that would put us at the beginning of December, I believe. So we do have a little bit of time to figure this out. The other thing I would say about it is, there's a lot of uncertainty about the rollout of this requirement, and it seems almost certain that this will be litigated, which could affect the timeline for implementation. So a lot that we still don't know, and so I can't really speak too much more in much more detail about how that's going to look for us as an organization. But I wanted to let you know that we're following it closely and working to better understand what it means for us as an organization. Another thing to say about the requirement is the thing is that employers either need to make sure their employees are vaccinated or implement a testing program for those who are not vaccinated and don't want to become vaccinated so that they can be routinely tested to make sure that they're COVID negative. So that is in the works, and more to come at future meetings. And those are, well, I guess a couple other things. So at the end of October, we had been planning a visit by Senator Bach and Representative Eklund. There was a gala planned that was going to be hosted by the Chamber and Visit Cook County. The gala has been canceled, but we are still moving ahead with the stakeholder meetings that we were planning for October 29th and October 30th. The one on the 29th is going to be from 3 to 5 p.m. That's a Friday, and that's going to be in Tofte. And then the meeting on, excuse me, on Saturday, October 30th, will be in Grand Portage, and that's going to be from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So just wanted to let you know that we're still working on that as well.
I'm sorry, James, could you say the October 29th once more?
Yeah, sure. It's Friday, October 29th from 3 to 5 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
And that's going to be in Tofte, and we had talked about having it at Tofte Town Hall. Not sure that space is going to work for us, and so we're looking at possibly doing it at the school.
Right, because the people will be very interested in coming, and it's not a very big room.
Mm-hmm.
So the school would be, 3 o'clock is the time the children are just about out of school. So, maybe it would have to be a little bit later. You'd have to check with the director there.
Okay.
But
I
I
do
think it'd be
know-
a better place.
We did choose that time window because there's another event occurring at 5:30 afterward that the senator and representative need to attend. So we chose the 3 to 5 window so that they would have sufficient time to get from one event to the next one.
If it doesn't work, the Lutzen Town Hall is big, so
Okay.
that's a possibility.
Okay. Very good. Well, we'll work that
Right.
out and share details when
Okay.
they're finalized. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Administrator Yorkie. Any questions for Administrator Yorkie? All right, that moves us on to item 8, employee concerns / commissioner concerns. Commissioner reports, meeting updates. Any reports or updates? Mr. Sullivan?
Recently attended the Northeast Minnesota Emergency Communications Board, and they are addressing and working on our 911 outages. They are examining what's the difference between some of the events that occur related to equipment, and what are some of the events that occur related to weather and more environmental conditions. So we're waiting for that report. It was also really interesting to sit back at that meeting and hear the wonderful comments about Rowan Watkins and concerns about the fact he might not be able to be on that board with his new position. So I was given the charge of making sure that everyone here knew how important it was that he participate. They really value his understanding, particularly of radio communication and just how everything interacts and works together to keep us safe. So I wanted to share that with the group. And then recently we had a Cook County Local Energy Project meeting, and they're having their big annual solar tour this Saturday. So that's being advertised on Boreal and WTIP. And then lastly, the Gunflint Trail Scenic Byway Association met recently to continue their discussion about speeding and inappropriate driving on the Gunflint Trail. They really appreciate what our highway department has done in terms of signage, and also the enforcement has been increased at that area, but still want to continue to examine further ways to try to get people to slow down. And it might be some temporary signs that are used, but that is continuing to be an issue on the trail.
Any questions for Commissioner Sullivan? Else I saw, Auditor Powers, yes, please.
Not a comment on that, just to let you know, that Bruce Kimmel has responded. He'll have his report here next week,
Great,
so we can, you'll have it
Fantastic.
later.
excellent. Thank you. All right, Commissioner Hawkins, I saw an indicator for a report or update? No? Did I see just other movements? Did you? Ah, my mistake.
Well, actually, I'll talk then.
Okay, please, please.
But what Commissioner Sullivan said about the Gunflint Trail reminded me that we had a public safety and transportation meeting talking about jake breaking on the Gunflint Trail. Has your group discussed that?
We
at all?
have not, but I know it has been a concern in my district. More concerns or calls have been coming from the Devil Track Road area.
Okay.
And the lower Gunflint Trail where the gravel haulers
Yeah.
are going.
And that's what, we were kind of assuming that it was going to abate now that the construction season's coming to an end. But I guess there's a couple local truckers who like loud trucks, and that's the issue. And I just think it's too bad a couple truckers out there could ruin it for everybody, but, because it is a safety issue, but they're being called out now, so it's an issue there, it's being discussed, so.
Great, that's good to hear.
Yeah, I appreciate that too, having lived on the Gunflint Trail, raising napping children.
I didn't
Ooh, it
know
really,
that. I've been
yeah.
learning about jake breaking and what
Yeah.
are jake breaks and how I can't think of the correct word right now.
Throttle
but so-
braking.
It's a
It's
compression brake.
but there's a silencer you can put on them so they aren't so loud. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, who knew? All these things I'm learning.
Yeah, it's been talked about at the city level, but I haven't, I mean, for years, and I just haven't seen, it gets into this big mess of ordinance and measurable levels and enforcement and
And
our law
safety
enforcement agreement,
versus
and, it just
noise.
turns into a big,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, it
all
is a
that.
safety
Yep.
thing, so we don't want trucks without jake brakes.
Right.
We just want them to have the right kind of
Yeah,
jake brake.
Yeah, yeah, and when it's appropriate to use them or when it's
Right.
not and all that. That's, that was something, I just assumed, it's all relative. Our hill is a big hill, right? Well, if you talk to truckers who are from Alaska, they say you don't even need it here, so I don't know anything. Commissioner Chairman Dishaw had, experience with that, so he could get perspective as well, but, all right. Were there no other updates? I thought I saw, okay, well. Well then, that moves us down to 8B, meetings to note, Community Leadership Meeting, October 14th. The Zoom link is there. Then we have the meetings that, here we are, that Administrator Yorkie was noting with the stakeholders, with Senator Bach and Representative Eklund, and then Truth and Taxation, December 7th, 2021 at 6 p.m. here in the Commissioner Room. And then we have our correspondence and memos, both the local option sales tax as well as the lodging tax comparison. And that brings us down to item 10, adjournment.
Not even 10 o'clock.
No, well, yeah.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. Is there support?
Early support.
We are adjourned.
I think that's a record since I got here.
At 10 a.m.?